Hello, everyone. Welcome to CSC Online 2021. In this breakout session, we will be going to explore the practical and stress-free strategies in supporting student engagement online. Before we start, let me have a little bit of introduction about myself. My name is Siti Zaleha. Throughout the session, or even after the session, you can call me Siti. I'm a secondary mathematics teacher in a Cambridge school, as well as a Cambridge trainer and examiner. Nice meeting you all. So let's go straight to the objectives of this session. Let me make this very clear. This breakout session, we only have 4 separate sections to it. The first one is setting our parameters. I would like to share with you my intention, what I hope you will get, and what I would like you to set as your aim throughout the session so that you could have a clearer way of seeing and navigating the sharing session that I will do today. So we will talk about the ABC of student engagement, affective, behavioral, and cognitive, and we will go straight into each part of engagement. But before that, I would like to also have a quick discussion about what each type of engagement means so that we all are aware, and it will be pretty easy to relate to the strategies as well as the tools because we already have the same idea of perceiving and processing the type of engagement in the first place. So we have cognitive engagement. This is directly linked to thought processes. It also encompasses motivation, persistence, and deep processing of information. Next, we have behavioral engagement. This is about actions, interaction with others, as well as how the students participate in learning activities. And the last one is affective engagement. If you read a lot of articles or research paper, affective engagement is also called as emotional engagement, and this is directly linked to feelings. And what we have under it is it's about the attitude, it's about the interests, the values, and sense of belongingness. So I do hope that by now you are clear that these are the parts that we will go into a little bit deeper. And by knowing what each type of engagement means will help you to understand and relate to the contents that I have planned much better. Setting our parameters. So when you look at the title of the breakout session, I've given like different colors to different terms and phrases, practical and stress-free, as well as student engagement online. So what I'll do after this is I will peel layer after layer and tell you why I chose this particular phrase and what I aim for you as the participants to gain from fixing the way you see things according to what I have framed out. So practical and stress-free. To be very honest, I don't want to stress you out. Please, please, please do not see this presentation as like another things that you have to do, or the 1001 things that I have to try out now. I don't have time. What do I do? I just want you to understand first why I chose this term, and I'll tell you what is the thing that I am aiming for you to have at the end of the session. So Dr. Helen Kelly, I've contacted her before and she gave me a green light so that I can share her findings in her report here in my presentation. She's a researcher, a writer, and a speaker on school well-being. And recently, she published the 2021 report about international school teacher well-being during the COVID-19 pandemic. If you have time, I would strongly suggest you to download this report and spend some time to read it. Only if you have free time. I'm not trying to add more work. Okay. So one of the highlights in her report stated that the findings suggest a high level of work-related stress among international school teachers during the pandemic caused by increased workload, the demands of implementing online and blended learning models, as well as the blurring of boundaries between home and work. Of course, I do not try to generalize because there are also teachers who are teaching in different types of institution. And this particular report only focuses on international school teachers like me. But what I would like to share with you is throughout the 1.5 years, I've been teaching online and I'm still doing it now with hybrid learning as well. It's not easy. We are not prepared to teach in the pandemic. And to be very honest, the main reason why I proposed to have a breakout session about this particular topic is because I feel that there must be someone out there like me who wants to know what can we do best to further support our students' learning in a way that it's not going to impose more work, but at the same time, it allows us to take that one tiny step forward every time we try out something new. So please rest assured that when I chose the word practical, I'm sharing strategies that you could relate to based on my own experience teaching online and hybrid classroom, and stress-free. The intent of putting that phrase there is because I just want you to sit back, have fun going through the breakout session with me, and try to only aim to try out maybe one or two small parts from whatever that I've shared that you want to include in your teaching based on the nature of your subject, based on the age level of your learners, the dynamics of your class, because whatever that I will share may not fit your situations ideally, but I would like you to see the potential of any parts of the strategies that I will share and how you can tweak it and make it work in your lesson. And at the same time, this session is all about sharing ideas. So please feel free to interact with one another and share your input on the live chat on the right side of this YouTube video. Now, the next part is student engagement. And here comes your task in this part. I just mentioned that I would like to see more interactions going on between the participants on the live chat. And this is your first small step to do it. So in 2 minutes time, I would like you to input what is your definition of student engagement. So I'll start the timer then. hope by now you have started sharing and responding to one another's input, and you are also started to be made to be engaged with the discussion. So that's great. So to echo what Dr. Rhonda has said in the live Q&A session previously, she mentioned that there are 3 types of student engagement, and that's what we are going to talk about: affective, behavioral, and cognitive. I call it the ABC of engagement. And what she said about the camera on and off is superbly profound that I am really excited to share it with all of you here. So this is what she said when commenting on that. Whether the camera is on or not, think about what kind of engagement do I want to see? What are the tools that I have to ensure that I receive that kind of engagement? This way, we will be more successful and students will engage purposefully in the online lessons. Why I find this superbly interesting is because she is trying to tell us that, of course, you want students to engage. But if we are not aware of what specific type of engagement that we want and what are the tools that enable us to get to that point, that means we are just doing it for the sake of assuming that we have received the engagement. And more or less, it's all about switching on the camera, making sure the students sit straight and so on. And we feel like we have accomplished that. But there's so much more than that. So now we go to the first part of engagement, and I will start with cognitive engagement. Based on my own reflection, this is what I would like to share with all of you. Cognitive engagement is more than just seeing students sitting straight up, nodding their heads, and show you thumbs up on camera. To capture their thinking and learning at one point in the lesson should be our main priority. And this can be done effortlessly, easily in the classroom because we can see them, because we can have our resources ready, because we can check, we can move around, but we can't do all of this now when we are in the online learning setup. So the cognitive engagement tool that I would like to share with all of you is Nearpod. I find this really, really interesting, really productive. And based on my own experience, what I like about it is I can upload my slides on Nearpod and I can have like a checkpoint or a stop point at any part of my slides, and I can add either another content or activities. So when we want to do formative assessment in the classroom, we have our stop points at different parts of the lesson. And of course, because we have the resources, we have different activities, and it involves them to move around, interact with each other. So it's very easy. But how do we actually do it when it's online? I find Nearpod as a tool. And to be very honest, whenever I do Nearpod, I don't ask my students to switch on their camera because they are going to log in. And as I navigate through the sections in my lesson, I will put a separate activity for each of them. And the students have to work on it. And at the same time, I'm also supervising the cognitive engagement. And I don't need to see them like staring at the camera on their iPad and do their work, because I can capture the responses, the feedback, and the engagement at the same time using Nearpod. So I will show you what are the options and the available activities that Nearpod has. So if you look at the content part, you can add video, slides. This is what I did before. I just upload the entire thing. Web content, Nearpod 3D, PhET simulation. This is especially useful for science and maths teachers. There are a lot of like activities, simulations that you can just embed in your own Nearpod presentation. VR field trip, BBC Worldwide Video, slideshow, audio, and PDF as well. But what I'm keen to talk about more is the activities. So the time to climb. I know that we also use sometimes online learning platform in terms of Kahoot and quizzes, and time to climb is more or less the same approach as well, because this is a game-based activity that you can collaboratively do in the classroom in real time with the students. Open-ended question: if you add this particular activity next to the slide after you explain something, and you would like to see how far your students have taken it and thinking through about it, then you can also add this open-ended question. Matching pairs. I use this many times because in maths we have like different terms and you try to match it with the different sketching, and because you want to see when the students memorize a specific terms, do they also know how it looks like when we provide them with the diagram? So I find matching pairs really useful, especially when you want to gauge their prior knowledge. The quiz, this is fun as well. I just put 5 at the end or sometimes in the beginning, just to check their previous learning or their current learning. Flipgrid, everyone's favorite Flipgrid. Draw it. I find this super useful, especially for maths, because of course there's only one answer, but there are many ways to arrive to it. And when I set a question and I use draw it, that means all students are now available to actually draw and also show and write their workings. So as a teacher, when I run it, I will have like 25 small whiteboards on my screen, and I can start looking and provide students with formative feedback. At the same time, I'm also highlighting good work done so as other students can see it as a standard that they can use and they can achieve, and they're learning from each other as well. And all of this can be done in real time. I know that some of you may have also used whiteboard.fi. It serves as the same thing as well. So I'm not saying like, oh, you have to use Nearpod and leave everything else. But what I'm trying to say is there are more functions here that is also something that you can find like using other online learning platform as well, but it's more centralized here. You can just pick and choose. Doesn't mean you need to like upload the whole PowerPoint and make up like the whole lesson. No, it could be you just use Nearpod for like 1 or 2 things, like draw it and matching pairs. That could be done that way as well. And we also have collaborative board, and this is more or less similar to the Jam board. Some of us have used it before. The poll, I use this especially when I want the students to assess their previous learning and how they feel, how confident they are about assessing the contents before I start the lesson, as well as at the end, because I want to also see whether they have gained some confidence, whether they now know more things, or there are things that are still unclear. And we are using this, and Nearpod will also provide you with a report at the end of the session, whereby you will have all these numerical data charts about all the students' involvement in any activities that you have planned for them. Fill in the blanks, that's great as well as memory tests. So what I'm trying to say is there are more things that you can actually pick and choose to suit your subject nature better, as well as to suit a specific topic, because some topics are so visual. You need, like for example, like science or maths, where you have to sketch, you have to draw, you have to construct. But there are also some that requires thinking, that you need to elicit from the students, and what could be the better way if you are not utilizing some of the like important and useful functions from here. So I will show you an example of a particular Nearpod lesson that I had with my year 7 about angles lesson. So I combined these 3 activities, mix and match activity. I did this, like I said before, I love this because I can check students' prior knowledge before I started, because I also need to know, do I have to now let the students know again about the facts, or can I just move on to the next skills about angles? And sketch and tell is when I double check, because students may be able to match, but when it comes to sketching, we will really see the practical and the application of whatever they've memorized before. And that's why I said like the whiteboard function is superbly useful for me. And then I wrap it nicely with angle quiz to confirm that the students know how to apply the facts and how to use it in calculating angles. So more or less, my progression of this lesson looks like this. So the first one, the mix and match activity. So I just have to upload images. For example, like this one about angle facts, and then I have to just write all the names of the angles, and I can set the timer as well. Nearpod allows you to do that. 2 or 3 minutes, and students try to match it. And the best part is the system allows the students to try and do it more than one time. And you will see it in your report. How many tries did your students have done, and at which particular point they got the highest mark. And the second one, the sketch and tell, this is when I use the whiteboard function. So I put there sketch and label as many different types of triangles that you know, and I can see that there are some gaps in terms of what the students can show and produce according to a specific rules of how you present your sketches when it comes to showing a specific type of triangle. I'll share more about this later. As well as the angle quiz. This is very easy to navigate, and you can just set the questions ready, and then you can have the options, and you can also upload the images. One interesting part is I like this is because I can save my Nearpod lesson and I can reuse it and tweak it next time for my next lesson, because sometimes we also realize that, oh, I set the timer somehow as a quick one, and some students can't navigate it because of, you know, internet connection issue. Like, of course you want to do it real time, but when you start the activity, it's quite laggy on their side. So I learned from that as well. And there are certain things that I also tweak for my next class based on my experience running it the first time. You can always edit what you have set up in Nearpod. So I also did the poll activity as an exit ticket, because I've stated the LOs, and at the end of it, I share again the LO, and I ask the students to also do it. Please don't worry about the 59%. This is my first experience doing it, so I set the timer a little bit quicker. I just put 1 minute, but actually some students feedback to me after that, saying that, Miss, actually, when you started it, my screen just went static. After like a couple of seconds, then only it started to start the countdown, then only I can access it. So that's a takeaway from my side as well. I always have to also think about some extra time for students to access and navigate the activity. Of course, sometimes we want things to be done accurately with the time that we have set. But when it comes to doing it online, that's, I would say, like the crucial factor that must be calculated as well when you plan for real-time activities in online lesson. So this is LO number 1, LO number 2. After they are able to explain, now I'm checking whether they can compare and contrast, able to explain and differentiate the angle facts. And then the third one, to apply the first 2 LOs to calculate and solve problems involving angles. So this is downloadable. After the Nearpod session's over, you will have this ready in PDF and you can download it. And I find this super useful because there are some gaps in learning from the data that we have, because I will compare this with some of the students' responses for each activity. And then I will pick that up and make it like the introductory part for my next lesson. So this is how it looks like. You will have like the students list and all the activities there, the quiz, the draw it, the poll, and then you'll have the percentage of the students' responses. And I find this really helpful, really important, because 1, you know the level of participation. Number 2, you know the level of cognitive engagement, the results, how many questions they can get right, what are the most wrongly answered questions. And all this definitely will take some time for us to analyze and process, because I'm using Nearpod as like a full-scale lesson. But what I'm trying to say is, like I said before, this is my sharing based on what I did. But of course, if you have never used Nearpod before, you might want to just maybe start small, maybe just use one of the activity at one time and progress from there and see how it goes. So the top tips I have that I would like to share with all of you when using Nearpod, the first one is learning outcomes versus cognitive engagement. Plan ahead on how to assess this. So make sure you know that if this is your learning outcome, what sort of cognitive engagement that you expect to see and how these two can blend in together to complement each other. And what are the tools available for it? And of course, quality over quantity. I've said this many, many times. Please don't stress yourself out. Try 1 or 2 first and see how it works from there. The post-report session is useful when you want to analyze and use the data for upcoming lesson, because in the upcoming lesson, you can use the data to plan ahead and plan better to close the gaps from the previous learning. Let's move on to behavioral engagement. And I have one quote that I would like all of us to take as a point for reflection. Give your students a clean slate every single day, whether you think they deserve it or not. I find it difficult in the beginning when I first started my online lesson, because there are some students who will either not attend my lesson, which I have to chase and email my head of year and then email home. There are also some students who will join or attend the lesson, but a little bit late, they're not on time. Some will drop connection in the middle of the lesson and they're nowhere to be found. A lot of things. And I have to admit that, of course, when you try to see that how they behave in your actual like physical classroom, you know, like some students' characteristics, I can't run away from judge also, as well as having like an initial perception about some particular students. And I don't think it's fair to have that. I'm on my way as well to improve on this. And that's why, especially when it comes to online learning, we don't know many things because students are learning from home. We are not sure about what sort of situations that they have. Are the parents there? Are they sharing devices? Maybe they don't have a stable internet connection. Maybe they have health problems. And these are the things that
you can't get access to because you're not seeing them physically. So communication is key, and these are the major platform of communication that I have. Google Hangout, I find this very useful. So I have a group Hangout for all my classes. If I want to drop maybe like a quick reminder, last minute changes, I will just type out there and let everybody know. And then the Zoom private chat is also useful. And this is when you have in your class students with different characteristics. Some students are struggling because they have special educational needs. Some are just quiet by nature. And you will have some loud ones that will dominate the class discussions all the time. And by allowing students to do the best that they can, at the same time, you don't want the quiet ones, the one that are academically struggling and the special educational needs to be left out. So usually during lesson, even though I'm talking, even though some other students are contributing by sharing, audio with their audio, some students will start texting and contacting me on private message on Zoom. And I find it superbly useful because these are the kinds of students that won't speak a word in my physical classroom. But because now they feel safe that they can communicate with me without being known by other people, somehow I find that Zoom private message has opened like a new opportunity for me to communicate with all my quiet learners. Some students who are shy and they are afraid to be judged when they ask questions, they can now contact me and talk to me directly on private chat while I'm like teaching and having the conversation going with the entire class. So it's very important that we try our best to include everybody in the lesson because it's already tough. They are learning in isolation, and the last thing we want is for them to feel demotivated or detached. So these are the kinds of behavior that I would like to instill. I would like to mold, and the strategy for it is to communicate with my students more frequently. And of course, if there's any concerns about the students' behavior, aptitude to learning, attendance-wise, then we have to start emailing the parents, contact home. And of course, as much as we always have a routine in the classroom to get the lesson going, the same should be done for online classroom as well. Like, of course, I always have like to sing a song if students are in my physical classroom, like bottle on the floor, books on the table, iPad screen down. But now that we are doing things online, so I just need to have another chant to sing every day. Nothing much, it's just like when they listen to it, it's like a drill. Oh, okay, lesson has started. Okay, let's go. So it's always good to make sure that we have covered all these bases and making sure that there's no barrier between us when communicating with our students, regardless like which character or which profile they are. So these are like my own reflection. It's not tested in any research paper, I'm so sorry. But I would like to share with you some of the reflection that I have after like doing a lot of trial and errors and try to also position myself to empathize and to understand my student situation better. Don't judge. It's better to always have a positive outlook when students are misbehaving, being passive or absent frequently. Seek for clarification. We check with our head of years first, email the parents to understand the situation and offer any sort of help that we can. And also reward system to promote specific behavior that you would like to see in the classroom. Reward works. It could be house points. It could be any other form of rewards to recognize and acknowledge students' positive behavioral engagement. Praise and encouragement, it doesn't cost you a thing, but when we do this more frequently, praise the students openly in the classroom to reinforce good behavior and positive attitude to learning. So you don't praise them by saying that, hey, you did good today, but try to also provide why you said so. So the other students can understand, okay, student A is being praised by Miss City because he did the workings in an organized manner. He didn't skip the workings. He rounded things correctly to 3 significant figures. That's the standard. That's the expectations. And this is what we shared. So students know, oh, you know, we don't want them to have this idea, oh, he's the teacher's pet, that's why. No, but be very specific and objective when we offer praise and encouragements to students, because we want to set the tone high. We need to set the expectation at a specific level to be achieved by everybody. Effective engagement. And I'm keen to share one quote from Nicholas F. Roney. So this is our starting point for effective engagement. Students who are loved at home come to school to learn, and students who aren't come to school to be loved. I would like to give all of us maybe 10 seconds to process this statement. Okay. So it is essential that we must acknowledge the effective engagement spectrum. And it is highly important for us to know our learners, because students come in full packages of almost bits and pieces of everything. So if I were to sit back and think about what sort of characteristics, what sort of learners do I have in my classroom, I can conclude it into like there's 6 categories, but actually there's more. But just for the sake of sharing, these are like the kinds of learners that I have, and I'm sure you also have in your classroom. Some students, they are quiet and reserved by nature. Some have to deal with issues at home. I have cases whereby students are dealing with parents fighting with each other, going through divorce process. Some are staying at home without their parents because their parents are working. You know, their caregiver is actually their maid, their drivers. Some have special educational needs. Some are good, motivated and focused, cheerful and helpful. And there are also some students who works well with praise and encouragement. So I'm not trying to ask you to profile your learners, but more or less you should know how to connect better with each and everybody in your classroom when you know like what sort of characteristics that they show you and they express in the classroom. So the top tips for effective engagement would be relationship. Focus on establishing good teacher relationship. We want students to feel safe, and we want students to trust us as their teacher. It's very important because if the trust is not there, then students may feel hesitant to either like share their struggles or express the things that they don't understand from the lesson. So establishing good relationship helps, and you can't do it in 1 or 2 days. It takes time, but you'll get there as long as you have set this intention in yourself. And I think based on the comments that I got from most of my students, more or less what they seek from me when I teach online is they said, Miss, please help us to organize, you know, the work, the learning platform clearly and logically. And of course, when I sit back and think about it, it's true because they have for example, like in my school, they have 6 periods per day. So they have to like be in front of the camera for, 6 periods per day. And they have to navigate so many apps, so many different learning platforms. And they find it difficult when instructions are not explicitly mentioned. For example, on Google Classroom, when you ask students to do things, please make sure you also think about what if situation A happens? What if situation B happens? How do we navigate it? What sort of alternatives I can give to the students? And to echo what Dr. Rhonda has said as well in her live Q&A session, she said about providing some support in terms of YouTube videos or any guides, so that when students are struggling, of course, they can come back to us. But realistically, at that moment, at that particular time when they're doing the work, what sort of ready-made help or support that they can get access to so that they can carry on with their work. So that's superbly important. And then care. Tell and show your students that you care. Of course, in the classroom, it's very easy to do this. You can talk to everyone, you see everybody's facial expression and so on. But sometimes during online lesson, we can't have all this advantage anymore. So please make sure that when good things are done, reward them. So I'm not sure like whether your school have this house point system, but I love the fact that when I give house points, it's not the matter of the merit of the house point that I gave, but I love to provide reason as to why I award this particular student with a house point. And that particular report with my reasoning will also be sent out to the parents. And what I love about it is the parents also will be made aware of what are the good things that their child has accomplished. And usually this will set the tone and it gets the communication going at home as well. So the students feel very good about themselves. Hey, my parents also know this is what I have accomplished. And when they get praised and motivated and rewarded from school and from home as well, it gets them to a better place and they feel good. They feel good about attending the lesson. They feel good about investing more effort to work hard. And that's what we want, an effective engagement. And of course, try our best to make sure that we create the happy feelings during lesson, because students will have a positive attitude towards it. This depends on our characters. I'm not asking you to become a comedian, but try our best to make the lessons an enjoyment to our students. So when I talked about cognitive engagement, I also talked about the sketch and tell. So what I did was, after I got the report, I downloaded the report from Nearpod. I start filtering things. And of course, because some of the students chose to just sit back and not responding, not because they don't want to, but because there are some others who are more active and more outspoken. So I chose the quiet ones and the special educational needs students' work. And when I have the second lesson, the follow-up one, I highlight their work. And then I ask them to comment on their work. So when I did this, I open up an opportunity for them to communicate. And also, I want them to know that just because they are quiet, just because they're struggling, doesn't mean they're not contributing. I'm not only looking for the correct answers, but I also look out for what are the points that they can contribute and everyone can learn from it. So let's watch.
And you have equilateral. Okay, James, what's the distinct feature of an equilateral triangle?
All the lines are like the same lines and all the same.
Ah, you're right. So
It's just I can't draw a straight line because I don't have a ruler.
oh no, I'm not judging your sketching, don't worry. It's just that once you told me that all sides are equal in terms of length, when you draw it, you must also put this tiny line on each of the side lengths to indicate that they are equal. Okay? Okay, that's one. Now let's see. Okay, let's look at Ethan's. Okay, equilateral, we've discussed that. Scalene, now this is interesting. Ethan, can you tell us a little bit about scalene triangle? What type of triangle is it?
All sides are not the same.
Ah, okay. So to everyone who missed this type of triangle from your answer, then you can actually now jot down one more. It's called scalene. And a scalene triangle, all side lengths are different. Okay, let me clear this. Close. Okay, and then
So that's a little bit about how I actually recycle my students' work so that I can also get the quiet ones and the struggling ones and the special educational needs one into the discussion. Because, you know, at the end of the day, every single one students of us matter, and we need to celebrate and highlight this as well. And when you have equilateral. So as a conclusion, I just want you to know that please do not take every type of engagement as a separate entity. They all actually blended in and mixed well together. So to sustain the engagement, we have to constantly monitor the ABC of student engagement: affective, behavioral, and cognitive. So just to have a glance through about the objectives of the session. By now, we have set our parameters. We have talked about the strategy for cognitive, which is using Nearpod. Please do spend time, explore the options of activities. You'll be amazed and you'll have fun with it. Behavioral engagement as well, and effective engagement just now. So just to touch base, I hope you can find one or two strategies that are relatable to your situation with your learner's age level and the dynamics of the class, and as well as try not to do many things at once, because, you know, we are not fully ready actually to teach in the pandemic. We are actually going from strength to strength. We are doing it, you know, bit by bit to see what works, what not works, and so on. So let's see this on a more positive upscale, and let's maybe try out one thing first or two and see how it goes from there. So here's an exit ticket for you. Try to list down 3 key points from this session. And what is the one thing that you would like to try out in your online lessons after this? I'll give you a minute. At the same time, you can start typing out on the live chat and also interact with other participants. And I hope that you will have a productive exchange of ideas by doing so. 1 minute. Okay, So more or less time's up. Then I'll just end this session by saying that I hope you are now able to see the importance of categorizing the different types of engagement. I hope you can now see the importance of setting the right intention, what sort of engagement type that you would like to gauge, what tools are available, and what are the instructional strategies that you can implement to make it work. So enjoy the rest of the breakout sessions and all the workshops in the CSC Online 2021. And I wish you all the best. Stay safe until we see you again. Thank you. Bye.